So right now we're sort of focusing on we've spent a lot of time looking out across the property, and we're really starting just barely to understand sort of the outlines of some of the garden enclosures that date to Custis's ownership of the property. You've got these massive post holes associated with one enclosure directly behind the house, and then we're finding other features associated with other enclosures. I think there's probably at least one or two more. So as we're sort of defining the boundaries and the way that the site would have been broken up during Custis's ownership, we've sort of taken these different enclosures and then treat them as separate things. So one thing we're doing there is to open up large swaths of the site using a backhoe to pull off the plow zone there, and really start understanding on the very large scale what the distribute or what the plantings. We're really starting to get into all these specific plantings and specifically how they're laid out and what that has to do with the different layouts of the garden over the course of the early 18th century. In the later 18th, there's a later 18th century sort of on the garden on top of the earlier one. And since these are planting features, of course, there's very few artifacts in these features, so a lot of it comes down to the inclusions. One cool thing that we're finding is that Custis seems to have imported gravel, most likely from England, though we're still trying to source it, as part of his garden to lay out gravel walkways. And we're really starting to use, by looking at different types of gravel, understand what sort of plants, what order of things were planted in based on the gravel that has been incorporated into different features. Unfortunately, since the site was plowed, the ground surface at the time of the garden across the majority of the area has been totally disturbed, and so none of these gravel pathways still exist. But one thing we're doing is doing close interval testing across large areas, and then looking at amount of gravel in plow zone and other types of inclusions to see if we can find evidence for where those pathways may have been laid out. And hopefully together with that and then the soil chemistry and phytolith analysis, we can really start to understand exactly how how each of these enclosures was laid out, how those things changed over time, and hopefully through that really be able to say pretty accurately what the garden would have looked like during Custis's ownership and how it would have been laid out and what that sort of would have meant for Custis as a very wealthy Virginian planter, and trying to show off his wealth in a colonial world as a colonial member of the colonial aristocracy. It's just, it's mostly quartzite. There's some jasper maybe, or we've been calling it jasper. We really need to get a geologist in to look at it and be really clear, but we're taking lots of samples. So man, if a geologist wants to really look at a bunch of gravel, but it's, this sort of rounded stone, that's been, nothing like anything, around here that we, typically find, most of the time around here. If we've got, what would generally have been gravel is made of marl and fossilized shell, because that's what's coming out of the stream banks around here. Certainly could have been from somewhere else in Virginia or maybe somewhere further afield, but not quite as far as England. But given Custis's contacts at that time in England, it seems probably would have been easiest for him to just bring it over, ship it over across the Atlantic. But again, it's got to work with the geologist to figure that one out. Well, and we didn't, for a while we were like, oh, gravel, that must be, usually when we find gravel around here, we're like, okay, that must be 20th century or at least late 19th century, sometime after the railroads come in. But as realizing as we're digging this stuff, we're like, this is interesting. This is in plow zone. Based on what we know, the plow stopped being plowed in probably 1885, so the late 19th century. And as we were digging these feature after feature after feature and being like, this gravel here, this looks a little bit weird. This looks a little bit like maybe this is this has something to do with the actual garden. And there is a citation in a historic document. Bird, one of Custis's friends, mentions walking Custis's garden paths, gravel paths in his garden. So it seems to be pretty good evidence, but we should probably figure that out. I mean, we've been doing, obviously public outreach is a huge part of the work we do here. And I think that's something that we are, really dedicated to trying to work out, with all of our projects. Obviously the First Baptist Church is the most straightforward in terms of, connecting with an interested community. But that's something that sort of we think about with all our projects is how do we work? What is the community that we work with? Some of our smaller projects specifically focused on that, working with local members of Williamsburg's community, which has been really good, really rewarding. I think the other thing that we are thinking a lot about and working towards, sort of related to that is we're in the planning phases of a whole new archaeology lab, moving out of this old building that was built to be a actual this is where they cooked the meals that would be served in the taverns and served around town. This was not built as an archaeology building, and it has served as such for way, way too long, and it's falling apart and it's got asbestos in it. So it's not the best place to, hold archaeological collections. As we start going into building a new building, we're really thinking about, okay, if we get to design an archaeology lab and an archaeology exhibit space, a place that is for both, holding collections, keeping them secure and safe and preserving them, but also showing them to people and allowing people to come in and look at them, both members of the public and, visiting researchers, that sort of thing. How do we design a building that is accessible and also, laid out in a way that makes our job easier? And that's been really cool to be able to do that, to think about that. I'm not sure if it's all going to come, according to our perfect world plan, but it seems to be coming together pretty well. And so as part of that, thinking about, how do we do our job in a way that is engaged with all the various publics that come to Colonial Williamsburg, and how can we be better about doing that and be better about being accessible to other archaeologists and to other people generally.